si ose fituesi që ka pasur edhe raportime, qarkullim të raportime në BÇK, në Bankën Qendrore të Kosovës, që edhe fondet, megjithatë, ju e keni miratuar këtë shitje, si bardh, pra keni përzgjedhur si fitues.
Zoti Rucker, a mund të na tregoni se në cilën periudhë dhe në çfarë cilësie keni qenë pjesë e procesit të privatizimit në Kosovë?
I was actually the chair of the KTA from, I think, February 2005 until September or August 2006.
Zoti Rucker, a keni mbajtur pozita të tjera brenda administratës së Kombeve të Bashkuara në Kosovë që në një formë ose tjetër kanë pas lidhje me procesin e privatizimit në Kosovë?
Most certainly. I was the head of Pillar 4 and deputy SRSD from in the same period, from February 2005 until the end of August 2006. And in September 2006, I became the SRSD and Privy Administrator for Kosovo until the end June 2008. So I had to do the privatization process either relatively directly because the KTA chair was coupled to the Pillar 4 position. Then, the SRG, you are still indirectly responsible for everything that's done myself. And directly as well, but I was involved more in the day-to-day dealings of the privatization after August 2006.
Zoti Rucker, nga dëshmitarët e kaluar që kanë qenë pjesë e Agjencisë Kosovare të Mirëbesimit, po flasim për vendorët, dhe nga përgjigjet e tyre e kemi fituar një përshtypje të përgjithshme se gjithçka në atë kohë dhe deri në vitin 2008, kur ka përfundu mandati i AKM-s, ka qenë në duart e Bashkisë Ndërkombëtare. Domethënë, fjala e parë dhe e fundit ka qenë e Bashkisë Ndërkombëtare. A ndani edhe ju këtë mendim?
No, I don't. I think it was a shared responsibility. Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me?
Konfirmoni që po e dëgjoj.
I think it was a shared responsibility. We had a KTA board, as you will probably know, and this board was with several representatives from what was called PISG, the Provisional Institutions of Self-Government, the Minister for the Economy was deputy, so the vice chair in the board. There was the Minister of Finance on the board. There was also, of course, representatives from, especially trade union, from the Serbian minority. So there were lots of representatives on the KTA board, and I might want to mention at this point already, all decisions in my time were taken, I think practically all decisions were taken unanimously. We would in the board sometimes very lengthy discussions. We would have meetings that lasted for hours, and we would talk about special spin-offs, etc. But in the end, it was always, as far as I remember, a joint decision. So we would reach unanimity. And that's why I don't agree that this is only an international affair.
Zoti Rucker, e dim që ka kalu një kohë, por nëse mund t'ju kujtohet pak ajo periudhë, dhe nga perspektiva e ditës së sotme, a do ta bënit ndryshe privatizimit, ose a do duhet bëj në forma të tjera privatizimi në Kosovë?
No, I don't think I would do anything differently. As you might have heard when you went through the books and files, one of the first things I had to do when I took office as the DSRSG and as the head of KTA, I worked to change the legal foundation because the privatization process, when I took over at the beginning of 2005, was totally blocked. And one of the main reasons why it was blocked was that there were challenges, especially from the Serbian side, from Belgrade, that UNMIK and the KTA and construction, which I had found, that was not legally entitled to do privatization. So I spent my first 3 months in office by changing that legal basis for the KTA. I went back and forth with my headquarters in New York. And of course, this was also coordinated with Brussels to change the legal basis in a way that would allow us to actually start the privatization process properly, even in cases where you did not exactly know or could not determine in a due diligence process how exactly the ownership worked. Because the proceeds, as you know, would go to a trustee account, and it would then be possible to determine the owner in a later process. So we could get this kickoff for the economy in Kosovo started. That's what I spent my first 3 months with, and we changed it successfully by adopting a legal basis that is called eminent domain in the United States, and was adapted in an analogous way for the KTA, with ultimately consent that allows you to proceed even if the ownership is not 100% clear. And then I even went to Belgrade and challenged them whether they still think we don't have the right to go about privatization in Kosovo, because that was needed for kickstarting the economy. And in the end, I got actually the confirmation from Sandra Raskovic-Ivic in Belgrade that she told me orally, but I sort of kept it to a note immediately. She said that she wouldn't challenge anymore the right of UNMIK to privatize. And then we went ahead and started several, I think in my time, about 30 waves of consecutive privatization with all due diligence. And I think one of the European partners called it one of the most transparent privatization processes in formerly communist countries. I think I would not do anything different in hindsight.
A besoni zoti Rucker që në këto procese, sepse në atë periudhë janë privatizuar ndoshta ndërmarrjet më të rëndësishme shoqërore të Kosovës, të cilat në periudhën e mëvonshme, sidomos pas vitit 2008, janë përballë edhe me probleme të natyrave të ndryshme. Por a besoni që edhe në atë kohë ka pasur ndërhyrje ose përpjekje për të ndikuar në procesin e privatizimit të këtyre ndërmarrjeve, përfshi edhe prezencën e korrupsionit në këto shitje?
Well, I'm not aware of any corruption in the processes which I supervised, in the waves of privatization which I supervised and conducted. However, as you know, I mean, we privatized several hundred formerly socially owned enterprises. Whenever there was a doubt whether everything was in order, or whether maybe in the bidding process or before the bidding process for the tender there were irregularities, we would apply a due diligence process. And in some cases, as I'm sure it's on the books, we had doubts or we had indications that the bidding process wasn't fully transparent and there was maybe collusion between bidders, etc. In such cases, we did a due diligence with our regional offices. And in the end, in some cases, we just retendered because we had reason to believe not everything was fair and transparent. I think that's what one does in the privatization process. You go about it with due diligence. If you have doubts, which sometimes happens, if you privatize several hundred enterprises, then you go after it immediately in order to clarify if there is corruption or a process. And if that is confirmed by all your due diligence, then you retender or you forget about the tender, and this is exactly what we did. Sure.
Asaj periudhe, a keni vrejt, ose a jeni përballë në një kapacitet ose tjetër që keni mbajt brenda administratës ndërkombëtare, me përpjekje të partive politike ose grupeve të tjera të interesit në Kosovë që të ndikojnë në privatizimin e ndërmarrjeve shoqërore në Kosovë?
I think we have to differentiate between political and legal and economic pros and cons that were discussed within the board. Because there was usually, especially when it was sort of critical cases where there were political arguments as well, whether you want to do it this way in that region or whether you maybe retender because there are some doubts with bidder X or Y. So there were discussions in the KTA board. First of all, it was a special spin-off. Every privatization over that affected more than, I think, 300 workers was a special spin-off where not only the price was the criterion, but we had a number of criteria, including, of course, confirmation from the bidder that the workforce would be continued to be employed, and things like that. All of these major privatizations were special spin-offs because we discussed and we set the criteria, not like in your day-to-day cases. And we took already into the criteria some of the local concerns, some of the concerns of the workers, some of the concerns that, that had to do with Kosovo's economy, et cetera, et cetera. So fair and equal was certainly a special spin-off with a set of specific criteria we had agreed on in the board and that were actually, I think, public. I think there were no secrecy around it. In my memory, and that's where I differ from you, I think the bidder that we wanted to give it to and that got it in the end was actually even the highest bidder with the price. But if my memory doesn't serve me well, it wouldn't be totally surprising either because we had a whole set of criteria and maybe other criteria were met by the bidder. So there was nothing intransparent or mystical about it. We chose like in all other cases where I had responsibility, we chose the bidder which we thought fulfilled the criteria best. And that was in this case, I don't even remember the name anymore, but that was the bidder that got the bought then Veronically.
Zotri Rucker, po ndërlidhe më thonë me çështjen e Veroniklit, me qenë se kam hulumtu rastin edhe kam pa edhe çmimet edhe detajet se si ka shku shitja, si që tha edhe parafolsi, kanë qenë dy ofertus, ka qenë Adi Nikel me 49.5 milion euro çmim, si ofertusi i parë, si edhe ka qenë ofertusi i dytë me çmimin 33 milion euro që ka qenë Alferoni. Pra, flitet për një dallim në çmim prej rreth 40% më pak i ofertusit të dytë se sa ofertusi i parë. Në anën tjetër, kushtet e parapara të spin-offit special kanë qenë të ngjashme për të dy ofertusit. Pra, kanë qenë 20 milion euro investime, si dhe mbajtja në punë e 1.000 punëtorëve. Në lidhje me këtë, pra ju e thatë fillimisht që ka pas ndoshta ndryshime në kushtet e spin-offit apo çmimi, mirë po mund ta konstatojmë që nuk është se ka pas kushte të ndryshme, pra kushtet kanë qenë të barabarta për të dy ofertusit dhe në fund është përzgjedhur ofertusi me çmimin e dytë më të lirë që ka qenë gati 40% më i lirë. Për më tepër, ofertusi i dytë, edhe kur është përzgjedhur si fitues, nuk e ka kryer pagesën e mbetur, pra pjesën e mbetur të shumës së blerjes prej 29.5 milion euro që ka qenë e papaguar, deri në maj të vitit 2006, duke kushtëzu që të marrë një kontratë me çmim të subvencionuar të energjisë elektrike, si kusht që të bëj transferin, pjesën e mbetur të transferit. Pra, e kemi rastin ku një ofertus le që fiton si i dyti me radhë, por edhe i dikton kushtet ndaj vetë shitësit, pra në këtë rast AKM-s. Si mund ta shpjegoni këtë me, domethënë, argumente logjike dhe të një ekonomie të tregut, kur të gjitha indikacionet janë që pra është e palogjikshme dhe e paspjegueshme që dikush të fitoj si ofertuesi i dytë, e për më tepër të diktoj edhe kushte të mëtejme me kusht që të paguaj çmimin përfundimtar.
Okay, I have to take your figures, or because I cannot confirm that the other bidder price was higher than Alfron's. Right? It's just too long ago. But what I can confirm that is that we did, as we always did, a due diligence, and there was not only the price criterion, but there were other criteria, including sort of the financial power, the reputation, and everything else that concerned the two bidders, and the likelihood that we would attach to the bidder for carrying through with everything that we required for the workers, for the economy, for the local economy, for the economy in Kosovo. So this was indeed one of the bigger privatization procedures. And in hindsight, I still have a very good conscience that we did everything right. There must have been the reasons why Alfron got it and the others didn't get it. And, you know, we could go, probably if we go through the books of the board, we could go through the criteria list again and through the arguments that were made why we took X and not Y. There was nothing shady about it. This is how privatization works. You have to take into account the price, but you also have to take into account different factors, because if it's only the price, I think you would be the first one in your inquiry committee to say that's the wrong privatization process. Not the price is the only thing that determines it, but there should also be a due diligence on the background of firms. And that's exactly what we did. As regards this payment in installments, I'm not aware of it anymore. Of course, it's too long ago, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is also relatively normal in a privatization process, that especially big